Intercontinental or United States Championship. I mean, yeah, Dean Ambrose has been Intercontinental and U.S. Champion before, but here's the thing, I don't think he's ever been given a meaningful reign as champion, and I think that he's really over more so than being U.S. Intercontinental Champion at this point in his career from the outstanding performances that he's been giving us, and he's been overshadowed for far too long by people like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, who really were the breakout stars from the Shield. Dean Ambrose has never been taken seriously until now, and that's why I'm putting myself over as the biggest Dean Ambrose fan in the world that you could hear on YouTube. And I know there are a lot of Dean Ambrose fans. They do exist on YouTube, and people who write these columns about Dean Ambrose. I myself wrote a column a couple of weeks ago talking about the push of Dean Ambrose and how thrilled and excited I was though for the fact that Dean Ambrose was getting a push from WWE, because we have waited months for this to happen, and it's only now that it's happening, which leaves me at a point of being really frustrated, because Dean Ambrose has obviously proven that he is over and can be over more with WWE fans, and there's no one who's going to argue that point with me, that he's just the most entertaining one of the Shield. You'll have a conversation with the everyday wrestling fan, and the one name that always comes up is how much of a fan they are of Dean Ambrose, and I concur with their opinion on that, and that to me really tells me a lot. How wrestling fans, I've said many times, are the smartest people in the world who are never given enough credit. These people are the ones who are saying that Dean Ambrose is their favorite one of the Shield. Nobody talks about Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins anymore. Seth Rollins can't even walk, and Roman Reigns being champion is just kind of out of the question, in my opinion. Even no matter how many times he wins that championship, the one who should be champion is Dean Ambrose. I mean, how does WWE get away with never giving Dean Ambrose an opportunity to become champion, or giving him a championship like the WWE Championship? I mean, back in the day, when they would have had the WWE and World Heavyweight Championship, I mean, Dean Ambrose would have at least made a great world champion when they had both titles, and I think that if they still had both championships, Dean Ambrose would obviously be world champion, and probably Roman Reigns would be the WWE champion. But again, that's why WWE combining the championships is really missing out on a huge opportunity, because if the championships were still separated from WWE and World Heavyweight Championship opportunities, I think Dean Ambrose would have been given that opportunity, especially with how Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose have pretty much been the focal point of what's happening in WWE and what's really been created off of ever since Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns were taken far seriously back as early as TLC of last year. I mean, when they were winning championships and competing for major championship opportunities. I think this is just great, what's happening for Dean Ambrose. The fans have a lot of respect for Dean Ambrose, and they've proven to be very smart, with what they want to see in terms of a storyline. Professional wrestling storylines really hadn't been offering as much, especially when people are calling this year's WrestleMania card the worst WrestleMania card they have seen in years. I mean, where does the WWE get away with giving us matches like AJ Styles versus Chris Jericho for the 100th time, the New Day facing the League of Nations, which made no sense to me whatsoever, Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar in the street fight? If not for the stipulation of the street fight, the match probably would have been pointless. Roman Reigns and Triple H for the championship, and Shane McMahon versus The Undertaker. We all know what kind of direction that one headed in, and I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why WWE fans really didn't agree with the fallout of this year's WrestleMania, because of everything that happened. To me, I think that Dean Ambrose and the fallout of WrestleMania 32 is the one that's being taken more seriously now, and I think more of an opportunity needs to come his way. And I think the only way to please us all as a wrestling fan and the wrestling population is to give us what we want and to put Dean Ambrose over, because I think he's been overshadowed and undermined for far too long. Dean Ambrose to me is kind of like what's happening in the women's division, where people like Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch are never given enough opportunity. And the same thing can be said about the male version of WWE when we talk about wrestlers like Dean Ambrose, never given enough opportunity. There are so many wrestlers that fall into that category, like Bo Dallas, for instance. Bo Dallas is over. You go on Bo Dallas on Twitter, at Bo Dallas, conveniently enough, and you'll see the photos and the videos of the fans with the Bo Dallas t-shirts and the Bo Dallas merchandise, even for their pets and their kids. Everybody seems to be a Bo Dallas fan and a Bo Dallas believer, which is the tagline put on a Bo Dallas fan. If wrestling fans were given more of what they wanted to see, obviously someone like a Bo Dallas would be taken more seriously, as would a Dean Ambrose, which is why I think wrestling fans were never given enough credit. Creative pretty much is just telling us who to love, and right now they're telling us to love the likes of Roman Reigns, Triple H, and really to get into Shane McMahon versus The Undertaker. As much as we don't want to do it, we're pretty much forced to do that, and I think that shouldn't be happening in wrestling. I think the wrestling creative team should be listening to wrestling fans more. Obviously, WWE and TNA both aren't giving us what we want to see, and I think that wrestling fans are obviously some of the smartest people in the world, more than they ever have been, and probably should be being given more credit for just how much out there they are, giving us so many ideas and how many ideas they have for dream matches that should have happened this year at WrestleMania. I know Brock Lesnar versus The Rock was a big one, Sting versus The Undertaker, which did not happen this year, leaving a lot of wrestling fans at a point of frustration, and I really feel for all you guys because I know how much you wanted to see Lesnar and Rock and Sting and Taker. And it looks like we're going to have to wait a while longer than that. Now, people saying that Sting is retired because of his neck injury, I can understand why. People have said that at near 60 years old, Sting retiring with a neck injury, but I mean, there still is belief in my mind that we're going to see Sting wrestle in one more match, one major match that could happen as early as the next 6 months. So hopefully we will see Sting again. I know you had all these dream matches for WrestleMania and your choice of superstars to be over, and on top of that list obviously was Dean Ambrose. And I don't go back on what I said. My decision has been made and pretty much is final about how I'm a big Dean Ambrose fan. A couple of months ago at the end of 2015, near the end of last year, I was saying I was Ambrose crazy, and can you blame me for saying I was Ambrose crazy with everything he had done from winning the Intercontinental Championship to being in matches with John Cena? Great exemplifications of how good Dean Ambrose actually is and how I believe he should be taken far more seriously. And I don't think there's a wrestling fan out there who's going to disagree with my opinion when it comes to Dean Ambrose, because Dean Ambrose is obviously over and going to continue to be over for a really long time. Who would you like to see Dean Ambrose kind of mix it up with in the ring? I would love to see Dean Ambrose, as I said, with Daniel Bryan in a more extensive program. Dean Ambrose and CM Punk, Dean Ambrose and probably the likes of John Cena and Randy Orton. That would be awesome to see that. I say that because I've seen matches like Randy Orton and Evan Bourne, and Randy Orton teaming with Evan Bourne, which were great from back in the day, probably 5-6 years ago, and I would love to see the same kind of thing happen for Randy Orton and Dean Ambrose, who I know have worked together before, but I mean, can you imagine the psychology of Randy Orton and Dean Ambrose, or even Dean Ambrose and Sting? I mean, there are so many opportunities for Dean Ambrose, and I am still pissed off over the idea of how Dean Ambrose should have pulled an Ultimate Warrior and went into WrestleMania as Intercontinental Champion against WWE Champion Triple H and won both championships. That would have been awesome. Obviously, Dean Ambrose also being Money in the Bank this year was a huge suggestion, and the question is, with the question being, where do we go from here with Dean Ambrose in that incredible match with Lesnar at WrestleMania? Obviously, Money in the Bank for Dean Ambrose is something a lot of people are high on, and who can blame them for being as high on this idea of Dean Ambrose being Money in the Bank with how popular of a wrestler Dean Ambrose seems to have become. There are millions of Dean Ambrose fans on Facebook, Twitter, and especially on Instagram, as there are for many WWE superstars. But on the top 5 popular wrestlers list right now, Dean Ambrose, if not in the top position, can be considered in the top 3 of 5. This is going to be an amazing opportunity for Dean Ambrose fans, and something I hope that Dean Ambrose takes full advantage of, because on a scale of 5 stars, from a 5-star scale perspective, you can easily rate Dean Ambrose's future 4 to 5 stars, and that's a lot more than what I rated the topic from last week on this show. 4 to 5 stars for Dean Ambrose, because yes, I'm a big Dean Ambrose fan, and I'm not going back on what I said because my decision is pretty much final. The Ambrose Asylum is what the fans are being referred to. If you're a Dean Ambrose fan, you are a member of the Dean Ambrose Asylum. Where we go from here, it remains to be seen, but off things like the Royal Rumble, Fastlane, and now WrestleMania, which was an incredible night for Dean Ambrose, his stock wouldn't surprise me none if it's gone through the roof. And I think if there ever was a time to be a fan of both wrestling and Dean Ambrose, it is now. Wrestling fans all the time want to look for something to get into with professional wrestling, and obviously Dean Ambrose is offering us more than what he ever did probably 6 months ago. And I think if there ever was a time to take Dean Ambrose far more seriously, that time is now. If you have an opinion, you can give it to me on Twitter with a tweet at JonathanClarke1, on Facebook at HEW Entertainment, and on YouTube at JonathanClarke22 is where you can leave it for me in the comments. Also, you can join the conversation on my Google Plus page, which of course is at the same as my Facebook, HEW Entertainment. I would love to know what your opinion is on Dean Ambrose, who was obviously over and being taken far more seriously, and it's about damn time. And that's coming from the biggest Dean Ambrose fan you could ever hear in the world on YouTube. Subscribe to me if you like this video on my channel at JonathanClarke22, and I will talk to you again next week. Like what you hear? Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Sierra Hotel, India, Echo, Lima, Delta, Shield.
Don't go anywhere. HEW Entertainment Radio will return with the latest news, music, interviews, discussion, and Jonathan Clarke next.
When something takes place in the world of professional wrestling, you know where to go. WrestleZone.com. WrestleZone.com. Covering all the latest breaking news daily. Interactive forums where you can chat with thousands of other wrestling fans. Exclusive editorials and audio features by some of today's top wrestling superstars. Exclusive video content. Weekly polls.